I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. So thank you for inviting me to talk to you about audiobooks. It's one of my favorite topics. Um, Creating audiobooks isn't intimidating once you know the basics. So we're going to talk about audiobook trends, writing with speaking in mind, how you hire a narrator. We'll touch a little bit on the different ways you can get an audiobook produced. And so a little bit about me. So I'm Sandra Murphy. I'm an audiobook narrator. I've been doing this for around 10 years. I have over 100 titles and over 16,000 copies of audiobooks sold. I've worked with self-published authors. I've worked with large and small publishers. I just love telling stories. So we're going to look at some statistics about audiobooks. Okay, so these statistics come from the Audiobook Publishers Association, which is the major association for narrators and book publishers. There's another association for narrators, just narrators. And they hire different entities to do consumer research for them. So this is where the stats come from. So as you probably are aware, audiobooks continue to sell year over year. And so this is 5-year growth. And so from 2020 to 2021, there was 25% increase on top of that 13%. So there continues to be increases over last year's revenue sales year over year over year. So who is listening? 51% of Americans have listened to an audiobook. So that's 134 million people have listened to an audiobook. 38% of non-listeners say they're interested in audiobooks. So what are people listening to? So they're listening to fiction. Fiction's a little bit of a higher percentage than nonfiction. With genres, general fiction, I know we have one person with sci-fi and fantasy, romance, nonfiction. And so fastest growing genres, romance, children's YA, sci-fi, and fantasy. So I think the next slides are really interesting. How do listeners find audiobooks? Friends and family, YouTube, apps and websites, browsing other titles, social media. So it really is word of mouth. And I find that people are going to consume your work in the way that they consume. So I love listening to audiobooks. I'm going to look to see if you have an audiobook. If people like ebooks, they're going to look to see if you're ebooks. If people want print, they're going to look to see if you have print. So what are the top factors people think about when choosing an audiobook? This is a new stat this year. The availability of the audiobook in the listening service that they listen to is the most important thing, above narrator and above author and above price. So if they're listening to books on Spotify, they want your book on Spotify. If they get them through the library, they want it on the library platform. If they get it from Audible, they want it there. And this will become an important piece of information as we move through the presentation and we talk about distribution. But they're wanting the audiobook in the platform that they're used to listening to audiobooks in. Now, narrator's number 2. So I do encourage you to put the name of your narrator on your audiobook cover. So you'll take your print cover, and your print cover is rectangular. Your audiobook cover will be square, and they have certain dimensions that it needs to be. So the only thing you need to do is convert the size, and put the name of the audiobook narrator on it. So there are things that you can do as you're writing to have your work be more audio friendly. So we're going to talk about that next. Talk about writing with speaking in mind. So can anyone name this nut?
Pecan.
Anybody say it differently?
Pecan.
Pecan. Anybody else? There's still 2 more ways you can say it.
Pecan?
So this is a regionalism.
Pecan.
Yeah, so pretty much in the West, it's pecan. and that's the dominant pronunciation. In the South, it's pecan. East Coast is pecan, and Midwest is pecan. And so actually, it's surprising how many times I've said this not in books, and I always kind of um, think about where the person, like either where the book is set or who is speaking, where are they from? And then I say the name of the nut accordingly. Interesting, just something to keep in mind if you're writing fiction and it takes place in a certain area of the country, there'll be those regionalisms. Okay, naturalistic dialogue. So there's a big difference for me when I'm reading dialogue between want to and wanna. Do I want to go to the store or do I want to go to the store? So, and contractions like do not and don't. So when you're thinking about writing your dialogue, think about how you actually want it to be said, because I don't have any wiggle room. I read the exact words on the page. So just something to think about. Dialogue tags, that's your he said, she said. If you have two people in the scene, what I would recommend is set who's speaking and then alternate back and forth between them. You don't have to use dialogue tags, you can sprinkle some in. When you're reading a book, your eyes will start to skim over that. And it's a little bit different in an audiobook version when you're hearing it every time. Now we can do things to minimize that a little bit, like, I'm going to the store, he said. But we do have to say it every time. So just the best way to see if it sounds good is actually to read your book out loud. Or I know that some writers have a program read their book back to them and they catch things that way. But I do highly recommend hearing your book, whether you read it aloud or something reads it to you, and that will draw some of your attention to this to see if you have too many of one type of dialogue tag, if there's anything you can do about the dialogue tags. They're not problematic, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that when you can skim over them in the print version, you're hearing them said live in the audiobook. If you repeat a phrase, that's what great editors are for, right? Like if you arch an eyebrow to show emotion and you've done it 20 times. I know you're looking for things like that with the editor or your beta readers, but it definitely comes through in the audiobook. Audiobooks are really good when you write, they're written like a screenplay or a movie. So you're not only writing something to be read, but you're writing it to be performed. So it's like writing a song. It's like writing a song on a sheet of paper. You're writing the music down, but hearing it performed live is an entirely different experience. Okay, accents. So I love this quote by Joel Frimkin, who's a narrator. Every time an author writes they had some kind of accent I couldn't quite place, the narrator dies. Please don't kill us. If you have character accents, describe them. It can be Eastern European if you don't want to commit to a country. It could be a blend of urban New York, spent some time in the South. At least I know what influences you're thinking of to pull from and create a voice. And you can be very specific. When he spoke, he sounded like someone doing a disrespectful parody of a New England accent. That gives your narrator everything they need to know about what it should sound like, what your voice should sound like. Because it's true, as we talked about before we actually began the presentation, if your book is going to a publisher and they're choosing a narrator, you might never speak to that narrator. So the best thing you can do about how your characters want to sound is to put things in the text of the book on what you want that character to sound like. It could sound like crinkled cellophane. I've had to do that voice before. So I had to okay, so what does that sound like? And how can I create a version of that would be pleasant to listen to for 8 hours? So for those of you with nonfiction, think about your visuals, if you have any visuals in the book. So how would I deal with this Venn diagram in audio format? We have a couple of choices. We can say with the credits, so after I read the opening credits of the book, if you would like access to the illustrations that were included in this book, please visit. And then I would list a URL, which you could have at your URL / and you could have the name of the book and a PDF with all of the visuals that your audiobook listener could get. The other way could do it is to actually describe the Venn diagram. And this takes a little bit of time. So picture 4 circles that come together like a Venn diagram. One is red, one is yellow, and I describe the entire Venn diagram. So think about visuals, your images, charts, photos, notes, mathematical formulas, especially if they're complex. Do you have any bonus material like worksheets or exercises or resource or appendices that you want people to have access to? Illustrations for children's books specifically, or if you have sci-fi and you've done some world building and there's a map of your world, where can people get access to that? So just something to think about. Now we're going to look at some different examples from books I've narrated. So this is an excerpt from Burning Secrets, Whispering Pines Mystery by Sean McGuire. She does a very good job of letting me know in the text exactly what to do. I held up the bag and showed them the last charm. The algaes of death. She smiled, but only at my mislabeling of the symbol. There was a bit of concern in her eyes, possibly even fear. More commonly known as an R. R like the letter? I asked. That was how she said it. R, like an engine revving. Pronounced like an R, Morgan confirmed. Spelled Y-R. So I wanted to bring this up because it's a very clear way of letting the reader of the text know how to say that in their mind as they're going through the book. And in this particular book, it was a sigil and it appeared many times. It also let me as the narrator know exactly how to pronounce it as I'm going through. So I thought it was a very clear way of handling something that doesn't sound like it looks. Another example, fictional names, comes in with fantasy and sci-fi. It also might be it would be a real name in nonfiction, but it might be something that's very difficult to research. So this came from Destroyer of Planets by L.A. Johnson, sci-fi. And here you see echoing metallic voice. So the villain in this book is an octopus overlord with an echoing metallic voice. Tut, yeah. Tut, tut, she said in her echoing metallic voice. How many times have I asked you to call me by name? Tzujiao. How hard is that? Actually, it was really hard. Between the metallic echo of her voice and her thick otherworld accent, Drexel could never quite make out the exact pronunciation. So for this one, I worked directly with an author, and when we met, that was definitely one of my questions. How do you want me to pronounce this? And she was very kind and said, any way you can. And I said, great. As long as you're leaning into the humor of the scene. Fictional language. So this is from Glimmer of a Clue by Daryl Wood Gerber. It's a fairy garden mystery series with fairies, and they have an entire language. So obviously I don't know fairy language. And this I did through a publisher, so I'll talk about that process. So remember, it's fairies. Dee Dee needs a potion or a spell to lighten her spirit. Can you do that? My mentor is teaching me how. I mean, Are you allowed to? I'm allowed to practice. She mumbled a phrase that sounded like, By de prude maha. So in this one, I worked with a publisher, and so what I'm asked to do when I work with publishers is to find all the pronunciations that are easy to find. And if there are ones that I can't find, like a made-up language, I make a short list of those and I send those back to the publisher after I've read the book. And then they do the research. In this case, they talk to the author to get the pronunciation of this fairy language. Any questions on writing with speaking in mind? We'll go on to production choices. So you do have some choices in how you want your audiobook to be produced. So the first is to work with an audiobook narrator. And you can do that directly. You can do that through a platform. So I have some authors that I work with directly. If I do that, we have some type of an agreement or contract, or we say, yeah, we're just going to use the Audible contract that will be in effect of the relationship between us and what we agree to. So you can work directly, or we'll talk about next going through the ACX platform, which does have a contract that makes sense for both the narrator and the author. The next thing you can do is hire a production company. Now there's some small ones like Pink Flamingo, Audiobook Empire, or Pro Audio Voices. Where I think this is a really good idea is if you have a multicast book. So I did a dystopian title with Pro Audio Voices, and there were over 10 of us narrating the book. So I got my specific roles and I did the dialogue for those characters, and there was a narrator and other actors for different parts, and we met on Zoom and we were directed, and we created the book that way. So if you wanted a multicast, or if you're writing romance and you want either a dual or a duet narration, that might be a really good place to go as a production company. Another option is to do it yourself, or to have a son do it. So there's a really good Facebook group called Authors Narrating Their Own Audiobooks. So I'll repeat that, Authors Narrating Their Own Audiobooks. I hopped on there just to make sure it's useful information. It is. Audiobook consumers place a high priority on the quality of narration. So if you have an acting background and are doing the voiceover, and have someone you trust their skills doing the voiceover, that's great. You also can get coaching on audiobook narration before you do the audiobook. Different audiobook coaches work with authors if they want to produce their own work. You do have to find or create a space in your home that has limited sound, so acoustics, a closet with lots of clothes, creating some type of vocal area that's consistent from day to day, because it takes quite a few days to do an audiobook. And then you have to learn the software to edit the audiobook, or hire an editor after you've recorded it to edit according to specs so it can get produced. And then there's AI narration. And we'll stick on this slide for a little bit. We'll chat about it, and then we'll leave that topic and go on. The consumption of AI audiobooks has grown, but the interest has not. So there have been people consuming them, but it's tapered off. So I have a whole other talk on audiobooks and AI, but I'm giving you the best parts. So human narration, a narrator's job is storytelling. When a story is told, there's emotion behind it. I feel my job is to say the subtext. So my job as the narrator is to find out what's not on the page. How did she feel going into this conversation? Where might she have come from if it's not in the book? What is she feeling? What is she not saying? And that's what I try to bring to the audiobook, is the subtext, what's not being said. It's in the moment storytelling. You also have those moments. So say there's some type of chase scene, there's those moments where you're actually surprised because you didn't expect something. Your human narrator is going to be able to bring that to the story. It'll be pre-planned with AI. When use your, we also are using our imaginations to describe the scenes and the places we are in the book. How does the environment that you've put the character in affect the storytelling? Great for horror, like dark and scary night, you're stepping on branches, you've got, all of those, pins and needles on your back because you're just aware. That affects the storytelling. I think, when I think of AI narrations, things I wouldn't want to hear would be, I think type of like hostage scenes. Like I do a lot of thriller and mystery, so that's where my brain goes, but also love scenes. I can't imagine what that would sound like. I think the market's going to dictate what people want. Will there always now be some AI storytelling? I think there will, but I think there's a lot of room for people who want audiobooks, want the human narrator. It is exhausting to listen to. So we're actually going to listen to it. So it's hard to find apples to apples comparisons, but I've done my best. So we're going to listen to, it's about 1 minute and 30 seconds clip of 1984. We're going to listen to it first as an AI voice and then as the audiobook narrator. So what you can do as an audiobook narrator is you can clone your voice. You can get your voice cloned. I have chosen to not do that. Some narrators who I really respect have chosen to do that for a variety of reasons. This particular narrator got his voice cloned at 11 Labs, which is one of the places you can get it done. And he used it in this instance to show the difference between what AI narration can currently do and what he can do as a narrator. I apologize. We tested this, it worked, but it's not working now, and that's okay. I can send a link if you're interested. So sorry it didn't work for the presentation.
And I will forward the link to everyone's email.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you for letting me know. Okay, I can hear it. All right. Whoop. Now it's all going haywire. Okay, so the other apples to apples thing I can do, so at least there's a print, apples to apples. So Tanya Kepes is a cozy mystery writer, and she's had quite a few of her books narrated by an audiobook narrator, and she's also had some done by AI. And this was the only place I could find to get an apples to apples. So it's same author, same genre. What are we seeing? So with human narration, she got a lot more reviews per book, 25 to 500 reviews per book. And with AI narration, there were like 5 reviews. And I know we all know how important reviews are. And the reviews differed. One other thing to think about with AI narration is copyright. And if anyone has different information, please let me know. But to my knowledge, this is correct. Text written by a human author receives copyright protections upon registration. Audiobooks narrated by a human narrator, there's a copyright that's held by the performer or given back to the author. There's no copyright for audiobooks that are produced by AI. So go back to the production choices. We're going to talk now about how to work with an audiobook narrator, but no, you do have other choices. You can work with a production company who will do it all for you. You can do it yourself. You can do AI narration. So we're going to focus on that first box of working with an audiobook narrator. So there used to be different platforms you can go to. There was Find Away Voices that has now gone away. So basically we're left with ACX, which is, Amazon, iTunes, Audible. It is the largest platform and the only one I really know of that a lot of independent authors are using. Nobody's going to give you a higher percentage from Amazon's iTunes or Audible than ACX, since this is where they go. This is how they do their books. Okay, so we're going to talk about narrow versus wide. KDP is narrow. That's an example of narrow for your ebooks and your print books. So for ACX, your royalty share and the pay for production exclusive are narrow distribution. So that means the audiobook would only be on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. The other bucket I have listed up there is wide. That would be where you would put your book on ACX for Amazon, iTunes, Audible, but you can also then take your book and put it everywhere, on the library, on Spotify, on all the different distribution platforms. What did we remember about how people are choosing their audiobooks? The number one influencing factor is they want the audiobook on the platform that they currently listen to audiobooks on. So that would be for wide distribution. But you have choices, and I want to explain all the choices so that when you make them, you're informed. So the least expensive way to have an audiobook produced is royalty share. So it's exclusive distribution. Your payment to the narrator is half of the royalties. You split the royalties. So we get 20% of retail sales. So there's no out-of-pocket money from you. So you can get an audiobook produced for free. It does take time for your audiobook narrator to narrate the book and edit it and all of the things. So don't be surprised if you're talking to an audiobook narrator on this platform and they ask you about your marketing plan. If you don't have any plan to market, then you have no plan for anyone to find your book. So people will ask for that. So how many copies of my best and worst audiobooks sold? I've had an audiobook that sold 5 copies. I've had an audiobook that sold over 5,000. Just for comparison, a very well-known narrator, Jeffrey Kafer, his worst sold 30 audiobooks, his best sold 16,000. So it can really vary. So what I'm trying to do as a narrator, if I'm looking at anything in the royalty share category, how many books do you have? Is this part of a series? Are you marketing other places? Are you on Instagram? Are you what are you doing? Or are we doing a little bit of some back titles because you are writing a different series and you want to get people excited for that? In 2019, they added Royalty Share Plus. So there's that little, kind of box off to the side. So it's still the same kind of royalty share, but you offer a stipend to the narrator. So it can be where, you're going to get paid for doing the book royalty share. We have a marketing plan in place, but I'm going to give you $75 or $100 per finished hour. We either have to spend the time to edit the book and proof the book, or we send this to an editor and they proof and edit the book. So just like you hire an editor for the print version, we have somebody listening to our book to make sure we don't make any mistakes, don't say the wrong word, and then they edit the audio to match the specifications for the website. That's another way. You get a little bit better of a narrator if you can offer that, and it's not the same amount of money as it is for paying for production. So now let's go over and talk about paying for production narrow. You'll get compensated 40% of retail sales. So Amazon wants you to be exclusive, and they're offering that to you, 40% of retail sales. If you go wide, you only get 25% of retail sales. But then you would be able to have distribution options and get your audiobook everywhere. So how much money? Oh, whoa, how much money is that? So a 10-hour audiobook, so that's 93,000 words. I did an average of $325 per finished hour, so that'd be $3,200. So we taught narrators think in per finished hour. So you're not charged for the time I'm in the booth or the time I'm pre-reading the book or any of that. We just charge for how many hours is your book. This is how much I want per finished hour. Let's see. All right. And in 2024, library sales accounted for 8% of total sales revenue. You have that little tidbit here, not with the stats. Don't ask me why. Okay. Any questions up to this point? It's all math. Okay, we'll talk about wide distribution. So these are the different retailers you can take your book to. So say you did wide distribution on ACX. Where else can you put your book? So Google Play allows direct distribution of audiobook. They like bundles. Anyone with an Android phone has access to Google Play, but they can use audiobooks for AI training. Definitely, we're in the land of read the contract for any of these. Kobo is really friendly to indie authors. They'll have you upload your audiobook directly, and then you can participate in their promos. They have an unlimited listening option called Kobo Plus. YouTube, a little bit of a double-edged sword, but many authors create a YouTube channel and upload their audiobooks there for people to listen. As people listen, you get paid. Once you have 1,000 followers, you can monetize your channel. For some authors, this is the most profitable platform. You can try podcasting, uploading a chapter a week. There is piracy on this channel. So, as I said, a little bit of a double-edged sword. As of this for August 1st, 2025, Spotify became its own retailer. Listeners are consuming audio as an outright purchase or a pool model, and authors get paid depending on how much of that book the listener has listened to. So those are different places you can take your book. And if that is way too much work and you want it simplified, you can go to an aggregator. So you can upload your audio, you can have your book on ACX, and then you take it to one of these two entities, which is Publish Drive, which is the blue logo, or Authors Republic, which is kind of the torch logo. And you're like, here, make it go wide. And they will do it all for you. This gets your book into library apps like Hoopla, Libby, and Overdrive, into Chirp by BookBub, Barnes & Noble, Nook, all of those places. So you have choices. You can do the work yourself and upload it everywhere. You can use an aggregator. You can just have your book available just like a KDP, only on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. If you're doing wide distribution, there's some promotions you can do. So when on Audible you do royalty share, they give you, I think it's 25 promotional codes, and then you can give the book for free out to 25 people to get reviews. So there needed to be some way to do that for wide distribution. BookFunnel allows you to upload your audiobook and create an audiobook you can distribute on your website. You can set your price. So if you wanted to give your audiobook away for free to get some reviewers, you can do that on BookFunnel. If you want to sell, I'm seeing more authors sell directly on their website, that their audiobooks are available on their website, and they release the audiobook there first to drive all of the revenue to them. Another thing you can do is a free prequel or novella or chapter, give it away with BookFunnel for free. And that only works if you're doing wide distribution. Listeners have been known to listen to a free giveaway like a prequel or a novella and then purchase the entire series. So it does happen. Advantages of wide distribution: you can set your price like we just talked about for our listener magnet promos. Kobo has direct audio book promos. Chirp has featured deals. You can sell direct to consumers. Gone are the days when Audible was the biggest player or the only player. There are now a lot of different places that people get their audiobooks, and growth is happening on all of them. If you're going to do wide distribution, here are 3 Facebook groups you might want to jot down. Marketing audiobooks wide, building a book empire, authors selling direct. Lots of notes and suggestions going on, and you cannot market on any of those sites. It's just for information on how do we market our book. My recommendation is go where the listeners are. Visibility is sales. Listeners want the audiobook on their current platform, and being visible in multiple platforms, I think, is a great part of your sales strategy. Okay, I am done with math. All right, fun part, selecting a narrator. So, you're not looking for the voice in your head. You're looking for what the voice of your brand is. So what is the voice of your brand? What do you as a writer sound like? And it might not be your voice. Is your voice a bass? Is it a cello? Is it a violin, a viola? Actors are going to narrate the book in their normal register. So when I'm doing narration, this is my normal narrating voice. It's this tone. So when you're listening to auditions, you want to find someone whose speaking voice fits the tone of your book. I don't do a lot of YA. I do some. I don't do a lot because my voice is not pitched in a higher register. Where my voice is pitched, it's mid to lower female. It fits mysteries and thriller really well. Fits some nonfiction really well. So that's a lot of the things I narrate. I encourage you to listen to a lot of audiobooks inside your genre and outside of your genre. If you listen to books inside your genre, you're really going to listen, get a feel for what's popular. All of these actors portrayed 007 differently. All of them, I think, did a good job, but they represented what it means to be 007 differently. So when you choose a narrator, it's kind of the lens through which your story gets told. Think of who you would cast in a movie. What kind of vibe are you looking for? I narrated one book as Jodie Foster. The person like, well, this has a Jodie Foster vibe to this book. Great. I took that kind of attitude and used it to voice the book. Reviews now that you're in the audiobook realm, reviews will be based not only on your words in the story, but also on the quality of the narrator. So those will influence it. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the voice of your brand. What does it look like on ACX? So this is the sample profile of me on ACX of a narrator. Tells you what they're available for, what type of contracts they'll book. You can look at you can listen to a variety of audiobook samples. You can know about the person, their credits, what awards they've won. You can, if you love to listen to audiobooks, you can reach out to audiobook narrators you like and see if they're interested in working with you on your book. You can go on and listen to audiobook narrators, reach out to some people individually. You can list your title for general auditions. I recommend, putting the audiobook out there. You could ask a specific narrator to audition and then narrowing it down to the top few. Definitely take a look at your narrator. So ACX has people who've never narrated a book and people who have narrated hundreds. The whole range. So definitely take a look at Is this the person's first book? Do they have a presence on social media? Do they have a website? What are their testimonials? Have they done any training? What are they talking about on social media in terms of voiceover? All right, so there are some best practices. Audiobook, your cover, your actual cover of your book. So future clients and audiobook production companies, the big houses, look at, for me, so I'm working with 2 of the large audiobook publishers. I would like to work with the other 3. The very first thing they'll look at if they're looking at me to narrate books for them is the covers of the books I've narrated. It's the major selling feature, as you know. So if the cover isn't well done, I won't audition for the book because it also reflects on me. So just having a great cover and a great editor, I know you know it's important. That's the best thing out of the gate to get, to attract narrators to audition for your book. Copy editor makes my job so much easier. All right, learning the audiobook process. You're here, you're learning about it. Be aware of what things actually cost and the time it takes to narrate. So I'll walk you through this. So this is time. So if I have a book that's 10 hours, it's going to take me 15 hours or, a time and a half to pre-read it. So that's what these numbers mean. So if I have a 10-hour book, 15 hours to pre-read it, because when I pre-read it, if it's nonfiction, I'm like learning some styles. I'm learning like what's an example, where are the teaching points, where do I need to slow down, how does this fit into the theme of the chapter, I'm taking those type of notes. If it's fiction, then I'm writing character notes down. So I write down everything the character says about themselves and everything other characters say about that character. Their height, the hair color, all of that, what other characters say about them, how they're perceived. So it takes me a little time to pre-read the book, and then I make notes in the book to make the narration process a little bit easier for me. Recording, so if I need to record an hour of audio, that may take 2 hours, may take 3 hours. It depends on the complexity of the book, the wording. If the way that you word things works in my brain, it'll be 2 hours. If the way that you say sentences doesn't work in my brain, it might take me a little bit longer to record that. Corrections, I wish I could say everything exactly as it's written on the page, but that doesn't happen, so I have to go back and make the corrections, adding a the, leaving out of the. I don't know how many times I've done that, but I have to go back and make those corrections. And then there's the editing. There's getting, making sure all of the breaths are at the right level, there's no clicks or pops or anything in the audio, and it's mastered to specification for all of the platforms. Alrighty. So now we're going to talk about creating a compelling audition script. So you need to choose from your work what you're going to put up on ACX to get an audition for. So here are my recommendations. So for fiction, obviously, provide character descriptions. I would love to read the entire book before I audition, but that's not possible. So if you have Ted, who's a Midwestern farmer in his 60s and has had a hard-won life, that's all I need to know for Ted. I get the general idea of who Ted is, and then the other character they're talking to, but just a short little character description, just to give your the people who want to audition for your book a little bit more information about who they are. Specifying accents. If you have a variety of accents in your book, now this isn't the waiter. This is a little bit of a more major character. So if you have people who are Texan or from the Ukraine, or it's Lakota or Polish or Vietnamese, I would like to know that because I know what accents I already have under my belt, which ones I don't yet. I think most audiobook narrators can learn an accent, but we need a little bit of time to do it. I might not have that dialed in for the actual audition. If there's foreign language. So having an accent of Polish is different than speaking Polish. So I just want to know what's in the book. If it's the first in a series, would love to know that. If there's any, so this I'm going over content. If there's anything objectionable, that could be a political slant. It could be a hot love scene. So if you're a romance author, you can put your spicy level on there. If you're horror, you put whether it's room temperature or in the freezer. If there's violence in the book, anything somebody's going to find objectionable, this will eliminate the audiobook narrators who would be uncomfortable with that and draw the audiobook narrators who love to narrate that. I encourage you for fiction to select a scene with mixed genders, so sometime where a male is talking to a female, because you want to know if a female is going to narrate your book, you want to hear her male voices. If it's a male who narrates your book, you want to hear his female voices. The rule of thumb is if you have your protagonist, so if your protagonist is female, you get a female narrator to narrate the book. If your protagonist is male, then you do the opposite. If you have two, male and female, that are working in tandem and are about the same, then you get to choose. So you need to have a scene that is 750 words, 5 minutes. We're not going to give you more. I like to get one scene that's this length because, and I do recommend that because you're looking for the arc, right? You're looking for somebody who can tell a beginning, a middle, and an end and drive the action. I've seen a lot, and it's okay too, if you have a lot of little snippets for your 750 words, but then you never get any idea of my pacing and how I can drive the action in the scene. So you can always get to, your top 3 narrators and give them a callback and give them a different scene and see how they do. We love callbacks, we're actors. I encourage you to specify an audition deadline. So please submit until Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. That's great. That way, if I'm looking and I know that I can audition on Thursday, I know that it'll actually be heard. So that's what I recommend on creating your audition script, picking what part of your book you want to hear auditions on. Okay. So you'll go on to ACX, and you can do that if your book is on Amazon. So that's the first thing. Your book has to be on Amazon. Then you can list it on ACX and have it open for auditions. We've talked about how to create an audition script, and then you put it up and you'll get a variety of auditions. You can even invite your audiobook narrators for a callback, give them a different scene, and then you make your selection. Once you've made your selection for your narrator, according to what distribution you chose, a contract will be sent to your narrator. Then you send the book. We read the book. So this takes a little bit of a process. We read through the book so we know what's in there, know a little bit more about the characters, do all of our pre-prep. Then we provide you with 15 minutes. This is the time to be picky. So I usually ask that it says the first 15 in the contract. It doesn't have to be the first 15 of the book. Sometimes if you have an antagonist who doesn't show up until the first third of the book is over, you pick a scene from that because you want to hear those voices that are really important to tell your story. But it'll be a 15-minute chunk. So you want to listen to this really carefully. You want to listen for pacing. Is the narrator too fast, too slow? Do they have the voices correct? When I work with with authors, I give them their top 5 characters in addition to this 15 or as part of the 15. So maybe you have a character who doesn't appear in the scene, but you really want to know what the voice is going to sound like. That's what I do because I want authors that I work with to relax, know that they're in good hands, and know that they've heard all of the primary voices for the book. At the first 15 minutes, when your narrator provides it, and you don't like it, that's fine. But tell them why. Can you please redo this, but pick up the pace a little bit? Or this particular character voice, I imagine this person to be a little bit different. And then let them know what that is, or maybe provide a picture or anything else that might help them achieve the right voice. And you can go back and forth as many times as you want. You can dial it in. What you're looking for is to be happy with this first 15 minutes. Because what happens after that, once you sign off and you're good, you've gone back and forth, you're through narrator a little bit, you figured it out. Once you've signed off on the first 15 minutes, their job is to complete the rest of the book in that vein, at that pacing, with those voices, and to finish. So this is the time to have those conversations. Once they finish the audiobook, the only thing you should be going back to them for is if there is a mistake. Did they include a the? Did they not include a the where it should have been? The artistic decisions happen at this first 15. And then this is the hard part. I know the only person you've worked with up until this point is your cover artist. So this is a second artist that is coming in to work with something that you've spent a very long time on and put tons of love into. So finding someone you can collaborate with and it feels good to partner with, that's who you really want. They're the voice of your brand. There's somebody you can trust with your book. They get what you're saying. That's who you want to work with as an audiobook narrator. All right, a little levity before we go into marketing. Okay, great. This time I want you to sound taller and let me hear a little more hair. The weird stuff we get told. All right, so we're going to go through marketing. So the author and the publisher should do most of the marketing and promotion of the title. The narrator is usually happy to talk about a book once it's released, pop that on their social media, but their promotion is going to be minimal. Narrators are interested in having very large portfolios and have shorter deadlines to turn that book. We turn the book, it's done, we're on to prepping the next book. It just makes it impractical for us to do prolonged marketing. That being said, there is some marketing you can ask if your narrator is willing to do. And we'll dive into that. The first thing you want to do with an audiobook, you get ARC readers for your printed book. You want to find a team to listen to this. So if you're doing royalty share, you'll have your 25 codes that you can use to have people listen and review. If you're doing wide distribution, you can set up a book funnel promotion and send out some free books that way. So where are these people? Are they in your newsletter? Are you writing a newsletter? Can you get some I know authors that get volunteers that way to review the audiobook. There are some Facebook groups you can go on to. There's a variety of different things you can do to find the people. But it's the same as getting an ARC team to review your print book. See if there's anything else. Okay. I got a recommendation to go onto Goodreads and leave a review of your book, but no star rating, mentioning that the audiobook's available and where to find it. So that's something you can do as well. So you're going to get a retail sample. And what is that? That's the first 5 minutes of your book. And that is the first 5 minutes. So you'll be getting that. So why don't you use it? You could put that in, you can even chop it up a little bit, put that in social media, maybe attach some photos with it, make a little video, put that up on YouTube. You want to advertise your book. So that's another thing you can do is use your retail sample create a video. Doesn't have to be of the book trailer either. I've done a variety of different kinds of interviews. I've done written interviews for newsletters. I've done Facebook Lives. I've done recorded interviews with authors. Some audiobook narrators will record live when they read. That would really not be great for my blood pressure. So I don't do that. Some do. They can give you a video of that to, post up that your audiobook is being done. Variety of different types of ideas for videos. If you have a newsletter swap or round robins, if you have other authors of, in your genre, and you'll talk about different things coming up, you can give away free review codes there as well. And you can, you'll send the code with the information on how you want them, and asking them to leave a review. And then you can submit your audiobook for reviews and awards. Audiophile Magazine is the dominant trade industry. They do earphone awards for audiobooks. Audiobook Reviewer is a curated site with different reviewers. You can be featured on their site. There's Storygraph, which is paid. Indie audiobook deals. You can get that when you're distributing wide and you price your audiobook very attractively to get featured there. There's the Audience Competition for awards, and the Voice Arts Awards, the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. So if you think your narrator just nailed it, you can submit for awards, which also gives you some more visibility. Okay, I know a whole lot about audiobooks. Not everything was in this presentation, so if you have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, go more in depth to something I've covered. Just let me know what I can do to help. Thank you, everyone. It was lovely spending the evening with you, and I'm glad the information was helpful.
Same.